Being a Disney Vacation Club member is expensive. There's really no way around it. I mean, membership costs like tens of thousands of dollars and you pay annual dues, which go up annually more often than not. So it only makes sense that people would have a lot of questions about membership and they want answers. They want real answers, right? Like not sugar-coated stuff. So when I got this question or the series of questions via email the other day, I knew I wanted to take some time to respond and I figured we could do it like this because this is really the best way to do this type of thing. So I'm going to run through these with you today. Hopefully we can keep this as quick as possible, but some of these questions are pretty juicy. So I've got a lot to say and I'm sure some of you will have a lot to say as well. So feel free to share your thoughts in a comment down below. The long and short of it is that this couple is a husband and his wife who are thinking about DVC. They're annual pass holders and they visit Disney 2 to 3 times per year. They're also both 50 years old. Which leads us to our first question. Is 50 too old to start DVC membership? I honestly don't think that there's any such thing as being too old for anything. And Disney Vacation Club membership is no exception. I do understand where this question is probably coming from because, you know, membership usually lasts between like 40 and 50 years. So that would mean that these people would have their membership until they were 90 or 100 years old, depending on what contracts they purchase, because this does vary from resort to resort. And that can be kind of intimidating because, I mean, like, what are you going to want to do 40, 50 years from now? Like, are you going to be able to travel? Are you going to want to travel to Disney? Frankly, I don't think that that's a question that is exclusive to people who are 50 years old. I think that everyone probably wonders the same thing because we don't know what the future is going to hold, right? And 50 years from now is a long time, whether you're 20 or whether you're 50. So, I mean, honestly, if it makes sense to you, you know, you've crunched the numbers, you've answered all the questions that you have, and you're like, yeah, this seems like a good plan, then it's a good plan. You know, I don't think age has anything to do with it. Next question says, we're more park people rather than resort people. What we really want is a resort that's a quiet place to sleep and a good meal. Do you have any resort recommendations? So I'm going to stick to DVC resorts because this is kind of a DVC discussion. For people who are park people who want a quiet place to sleep and maybe grab a bite, I really don't think that there's anything better than any of the resorts in that Epcot area, specifically Beach Club and Boardwalk. Now, of course, like I said, I'm sticking to DVC properties, but any of the places in this area, like any accommodation available is a good one, especially if you want to do the parks because you're walking distance from both Hollywood Studios and Epcot. So whether you're staying at the Boardwalk, Beach Club, Yacht Club, or Swan Dolphin and Swan Reserve, which are here and available, but they aren't owned and operated by Disney, you've not only got like the best access that you're going to have to theme parks on Walt Disney World property because, you know, 2 parks within walking distance, but you're also going to have the freedom of not having to wait for Disney transportation, plus so many great dining options right in this area. I know Boardwalk is lacking right now because like half of it is abandoned, though my fingers are crossed that they're going to put something new in there sooner rather than later, but you still do have some options over there. And then there's some great dining over at the Swan and Dolphin. In fact, they're changing out their steakhouse for a new place, so here's hoping that it's a good one. You can hop on the Skyliner, make your way over to Riviera, which has some great dining, and then especially as annual pass holders, you can make your way over to Epcot and there's so much dining there as well. So there are a lot of great options right in this area, though a downside is that especially over at Boardwalk, it can get a little loud in the rooms that are facing the boardwalk. So, you know, just don't pick one of those rooms and you should be good. Another resort that I think is great for this type of thing is Saratoga Springs. Now, I know some of you are thinking, I don't like that resort, especially for visiting the parks because they only have bus transportation. But honestly, the bus transportation isn't that bad. And Saratoga Springs is a nice, quiet, kind of out of the way resort, but it's also not that far out of the way. Plus, if you like to dine and you never want to have to think about eating the same thing twice, you're super close to Disney Springs, which is like perfect. So the next question comes in multiple parts. How difficult is it to get rid of DVC membership? And if Disney allows you to get rid of your membership, do you take a huge financial loss? So first and foremost, Disney Vacation Club, even though it is a timeshare, it isn't like the timeshares that you've probably heard horror stories about, especially when it comes to getting out a Disney Vacation Club membership. So there are a few different options available when it comes to getting rid of your Disney Vacation Club membership. You can pass it on. So maybe you're passing it down to a family member or a friend or anyone really. You just go through all the paperwork and they take on your membership. You can also put your membership up for sale on the resale market. Now, is it difficult to get rid of your Disney Vacation Club membership? Not necessarily. Honestly, I would say no, but let me be clear, that's not to say that there aren't going to be some hoops that you have to jump through. Even if you go the route of passing your membership on to family, friend, or whoever, you're still going to have to go through the process of transferring all of the paperwork, which includes a deed, into their name, because this is real estate that we're talking about here. And that's a lot of work. It also comes with fees, so that's something that's worth noting. And while it can be a little bit intimidating, and for some people who have never done it before, it can seem impossible, I don't think it's fair to say that it's difficult. It's just something that you might not necessarily be familiar with. Now, in terms of selling your DVC membership, whether we're talking about the process and if it's difficult or if it's going to be a huge financial loss, it really depends on any number of factors. What resort are we talking about? What's the situation this year or this quarter even? Just like the real estate market, there are ebbs and flows. Things change all the time. This is why in some cases, if you watch the DVC channels who are like all about DVC, or you follow up on websites exclusively about DVC, you might see reports about things like this, and there's all these stats that you can look into. Of course, changing times also play a role here as well. So it's hard to make a blanket statement that I'm confident with, because there are times where it might be an uphill battle to sell your contract, but then there are times where it's like the most desirable resort at the perfect moment and boom, someone snags it up real quick. Now, I will say, as a little additional tidbit, I know that your question didn't really allude to this, but if you're thinking about buying DVC with the hopes that this will be some sort of investment, like you'll be able to make all your money back, or you'll be able to make money off of DVC down the line because you're selling it and whatever the case may be, I think your head might not necessarily be in the right place. Now, again, I know that this was not what this person was asking, but there's always someone who talks about the investment of DVC. This is not an investment property. This is a timeshare. And so, at least in my opinion, the aim should be to save money compared to what you would be spending otherwise versus make money somewhere down the line. Next question is a really good one. We would like to visit other resorts. Does that mean DVC resale is not an option? Not necessarily. So if you go the route of buying DVC resale, you're going to have to keep in mind that what resort you choose to buy is going to impact how you can use your Disney Vacation Club membership. There are some DVC resorts that if you buy a contract resale, you're only going to be able to stay at a certain set of resorts. You're going to be limited to I think it's like 11 resorts that you can stay at. They're the older resorts. In other words, you won't be able to use your DVC points or membership to stay at the newer resorts. With the exception of the Poly Tower, because I know that there's someone who's going to point this out. The new Polynesian Tower is an extension of the Polynesian, not a Disney Vacation Club property all its own. So it's not technically a new resort. It's like a new wing. So it's still part of the old Polynesian. It's a little bit confusing, but I wanted to make sure I added that just in case some of you were wondering. Now, there are other Disney Vacation Club properties that if you buy a resale contract there, you're only going to be able to stay there. That's especially true with the newer resorts. And so if you want to use your membership to stay elsewhere, check out different places, you're not going to be able to do that if you purchase resale at any of the resorts that have resale restrictions. So having a firm grasp on what that means for you and your travel habits and your definition of Disney Vacation Club membership is really important, especially if you're thinking about resale. The next question says, you've stated in previous videos that you're a DVC member. I am. Knowing all you know now about DVC, is there any advice you would give your younger self when you originally purchased DVC membership? Okay, so this is an interesting one, and I'm gonna kind of reframe the question because, quite frankly, I don't have any advice for my former self, for younger me, because when we became Disney Vacation Club members, we did that because it was the best financial choice. The alternative, paying outright for rooms, was more expensive for one vacation than an entire Disney Vacation Club contract would have been, based on when we were staying, because, we stay during peak times, or we used to visit during peak times based on our work schedules and everything like that. And then we would travel with family, so that meant multiple rooms, But even over the years, as things and times have changed, I have no regrets when it comes to being a Disney Vacation Club member. I might have questions about whether or not I still want to be a Disney Vacation Club member, but that's a conversation for another day. Still, the choice to become a member, I mean, it was a sound one. I got nothing to say there. No advice for me in the past, you know? However, I think if I were to give a piece of advice to someone who's considering Disney Vacation Club membership, I would probably say to really think long and hard about why you're doing this. Because if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you're going to find yourself regretting the decision, or you're going to find yourself becoming one of those toxic people who's trying to convince everyone else to convince you that it was the right choice, which I see a lot of in the whole Disney Vacation Club environment that you can sometimes find yourself stumbling into. But yeah, I think that about covers it. I hope that this answers your questions. Of course, if you have any additional questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below, or go ahead and send us an email. We do get them. Sometimes it takes us a second to respond, but we will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. Also, if you're a Disney Vacation Club member, I want to hear what you have to say. How would you have responded to these questions? Share your experiences, thoughts, concerns, and anything else you got in a comment down below. But for now, I think that's about all. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Until then, bye.